One of the common questions I always get asked is it worth paying an accountant to do your tax return? Well, no matter where you are in the world, whether you're in the UK, the US, Canada, Australia, India, any part of the world, in fact. And my answer is always, well, it depends. So if a deadline is approaching to get your self-assessment or equivalent tax return done, then the question is, why not delegate it to an accountant? Well, here's my 5-point plan to help you make a decision in 5 minutes. So in order to help you make a decision, on screen is my 6-point decision plan. Now, this should take you no more than about 5 to 10 minutes to actually go through and put your own ratings, but I'm going to go through them one by one and put my ratings on an average scale according to my experiences, then to help you with the thought process as to how you can do the same and whether you should actually do it yourself or delegate it to an accountant. The first point you really do need to consider is finding, signing up, and then onboarding with a trustworthy accountant. Now, that is a very, very key hurdle that a lot of you probably just don't get past, and that's fully understandable. How can you trust the accountant? Well, in today's modern world, Trustpilot reviews or Google reviews is one of the best places to start, in my view, because obviously it's a collective review that's gone into it. Any provider with more than, let's say, 15, 20 reviews, and if they're 4+, well, it gives you a very, very good indication, and likewise. Furthermore, once you've found the accountant and it's signing up and onboarding with them, yes, it takes some time. There is some upfront work and there's some upfront effort on your behalf in order to get things moving for your accountant, then to get things moving for you. So on this occasion, what I'm going to do is, if you're doing it yourself, there tends to be a lot less friction when it comes to this particular matter. So I'm going to give it a 9 and using accountant a 7. The next decision point is the fee itself. Now, I know for a lot of you, this is probably top of your mind. And don't forget, there's a massive variation in the fee, no matter where you are in the world. So again, I'm going to take the UK as an example. HMRC, the UK tax agency, give you the tools as long as you sign up to their government gateway account, absolutely free, so you can do your self-assessment tax return. And so therefore, I'm going to give the DIY as a 10. And this is probably applicable in the US, Canada, and other parts of the world too. When it comes to using an accountant, of course, they're going to charge a fee, and it can range. So again, in the UK, you're probably looking to pay anywhere from about £100 into perhaps even thousands of pounds. It depends on the level of complexity of your affairs and return. But just so we have a quantifiable benchmark, I'm going to use one provider as an example, and that is Tax Scouts. And you can see on screen, certainly with my affiliate link, yes, I am affiliated with them, and I'll tell you the reasons why in a moment, that just for £134, you can get your SA100 self-assessment tax return done by them in full, complete, no matter how complex it is. So on this basis, I'm going to give the accountant column a 7 just based on Tax Scouts fee. But again, I do acknowledge that the fees could be a lot more depending on who you're using. The next category is quite simple, and that's the tools. That's a software tool. Now, again, I use the UK as an example. HMRC give the government gateway account and provide the tools for you to DIY it quite simply and then submit it. So therefore, I'm going to give this a nice clean 8. And from an accountant's point of view, whether you are using an accountant or not, well, they're going to use either that tool or a similar kind of tool. So again, I'm going to give that an absolute score draw. The next up is what I call the opportunity cost. Well, in simple terms, how much is your time, effort, and energy actually worth, considering that you're not an accountant? Well, the average time it takes, and this is an average, to fill in your self-assessment tax return, and we're talking about everything from signing up, logging in, filling in the boxes, reviewing it, submitting it, talking to people, getting all the data together, everything is around about 3 to 7 hours of productive time. So that's almost a whole working day. Now, granted, for some of you, it's going to take a bit less time. For others, it's going to take somewhat more time. But again, I'm talking about average scales. And I'm going to use the Tax Scout fee of £134 I mentioned earlier as a typical quantifiable example of the fee that you would pay. Now, the key question you've got to ask yourself in terms of what you're doing as a profession, trade, or business, if you can earn in excess of £134, and I guess considerably in excess of £134 for spending the same amount of time that you would have spent on your self-assessment tax return, then actually it's a high opportunity cost. Whereas obviously, if you have the time to spare and, the opportunity cost from your point of view is low, well, by all means, do it yourself. So on this occasion, though, I'm going to give the DIYers only 1, because for most cases, and I do mean most, probably 90% plus, most of you will have something else that you could be doing that's going to add more value to you, although this is very important to do. And then again, using an accountant, I'm going to give it a nice wholesome 8. Next up is tax savings. And again, no matter where you are in the world, this is where accountant really should be adding value to you. And again, I'm going to use the UK HMRC's online portal as an example with a lot of DIYs. And I've seen this through my own eyes and experience that self-assessment tax returns are filled in, but actually there is a plethora of boxes. There's so many different questions, sections, etc. And actually it can be very, very confusing to the untrained person. Understandably, it's like trying to navigate your way around an electric car now and be the mechanic for that if you haven't been trained in it. Very, very difficult thing to do. In that case, what's happening is many of you are just leaving money, tax savings on the table when it comes to filling in incorrect boxes or not filling them at all because you don't understand them, or maybe not applying or claiming reliefs and filling in the correct boxes for release, which reduces your taxes. In that case, I'm going to give the DIYers a 3 and the accountants a 9, because any accountant, I will say 90% plus of accountants, again, I acknowledge some rare cases, there are accountants that probably miss it too, but in 90% plus of the cases, your accountant should be picking this up, applying the correct tax reliefs and actually saving you tax, probably tax savings in excess of the fee that you're going to pay them. And last but not least, avoiding late filing penalties and penalties for errors. Now, this is an overlooked area in the sense that, well, if you late file, yes, it happens a lot. Apparently, there's an estimate that millions of tax returns, certainly here in the UK, end up being filed late. That is after the 31st of January deadline, and therefore an automatic penalty of £100 applies. And then obviously there's more severe penalties thereafter. I've done a video on this, which you can actually click on the description box below. Now, if you are using an accountant, and I will caveat this, that you must sign up in good time in order to get it all set up, registered, onboarded, so they can do the job for you. I'm not talking about signing up a day before the deadline or anything like that. Then there's a very, very high probability you're going to avoid late filing because your accountant will push this through. The other one is errors on your return. Again, a lot of DIYers out there, and it's understandable you may make inadvertent errors, genuine, you didn't mean to do it. Others can be somewhat more deliberate. I get that. There is a fine and penalty regime for errors, whether they're genuine or deliberate. And again, I've done a video on that, which you can click on the description box below. What I'm going to do in this instance, I'm going to give the DIYers a 4 because I've seen this happen a lot, especially the late filing. It always ends up being late, or quite often it ends up being late, shall we say. And then I'm going to give the accountants a 9 on this one because there's a very, very, the risk is minimized, shall we say, for both late filing and errors. So all in all, it totals up to 35 out of 60 for a DIY job on your tax return and 48 out of 60. And again, this is my view if you use an accountant. And these again are average scales. Again, this could vary for each individual. And I know it's not going to actually apply to each and every case, but I think it gives you hopefully a very good benchmark and an indication in terms of a process that you can take in order to make a decision as to whether to do it yourself or use an accountant. Ultimately, if it saves you time, saves you tax, and helps you sleep well at night, not having to worry about whether your local tax agency is going to raise a compliance check or an audit check because you're not sure if you actually filled it out correctly, then it's definitely worth using and finding an accountant for it. Otherwise, if you are looking to do it yourself, then certainly if you're here in the UK and you're doing the HMRC tax return, then I recommend this video that I've done, which is a 45-minute step-by-step tutorial that will help you get through and complete and submit your tax return online.